This video has been kindly sponsored by Squarespace. Hi everyone! Since I finally have all of my yarn organized and I'm still adamant on using as much of my scrap yarn as possible, I thought I'd go ahead and start with some scrap yarn projects by making 2 blankets. At first I was going to do home decor, but while I was trying to figure out what exactly I wanted to make, I was freezing since whatever the weather is outside is the weather that's gonna be in the apartment. And while I was sitting there, I was like, yeah, I think I might make some blankets. For the blankets, I can only use the scrap yarn that I have in the closet, which is kind of cool because it makes the blankets more unique since there's only so many color combinations that I can make. Another thing, I have a Discord community and every month we do a knit and crochet along, which is really fun. And every month we have a specific theme, and the theme for next month is surrounding love. I can't say what the theme is just yet, but if you want to participate, you can just go ahead and join for free with the link in the description box. You can also make some new friends that share the same hobbies as you and just have fun. This idea is by no means original. There's countless of granny square blankets made in a bunch of different ways, and since I truly love how granny square blankets look, I decided to make one with the scrap yarn that I have lying around. I took my time yesterday to go through all the yarn I had and took a couple of hours trying to pair them with each other to create a nice color palette. At first, I was thinking of doing something where one square would be warm tone and the other would be cool toned, but I wasn't sure if the amount of yarn I had would let me do that, so I just decided on colors that went together. I also tried to choose the yarn I had the most of, especially if I had 2 or 3 skeins of the same exact yarn. And after some more time putting together the colors, I ended up with this color palette and I think I'm pretty content with it. For the second blanket, there wasn't much designing going on since I knew I wanted to make it a swirl, and swirls are pretty straightforward, so I just didn't really design all that much. I've done 2 swirls before, and that was for my Coraline video, and I've also seen people make swirl sweaters. So I was thinking it wouldn't be that difficult to make a swirl blanket. I wanted to do one that's black and white, inspired by Junji Ito, but I don't have enough black yarn, so I decided to just go with whatever yarn that I have the most of, and that yarn is this sage green and this dark brown. And thankfully they go together, so it works out perfectly. I'm just gonna make the blanket as big as the yarn lets me, and hopefully that is enough to wrap myself up in it. Here is all of the yarn that I'm going to use for the granny square, and like I said earlier, I tried to pair them as best as I could. Some of them were kind of pushing it, but I had to exchange them for the better. I think this is the only one that I'm still kind of iffy about, but for the most part everything else works out perfectly. The only thing I'm iffy about is the parts with the green. This green is DK weight, so what I have to do is combine these 2 together. And if I'm combining them together for 2 separate granny squares, I'm just worried that it'll run out, but I'm just gonna go ahead and go with it. And if it runs out, I'll figure out what to do at that time. So last night, I actually already started one of the granny squares. I just wanted to see if the green yarn is actually like good for all the other yarn, and it is, and I'm really happy about that. The one thing though is recently, as I've been crocheting, for some reason my hands are like, it seems like they're growing weaker a little bit. Like usually I can go hours and hours and hours with crocheting, obviously taking breaks and stuff, but when I started this, I got to row, I think 3, and then my hands were starting to ache really bad, and I was just like, oh no, is it time to retire? I took a couple breaks, but I wanted to finish this square actually yesterday, but as you can see, I didn't get very far because my hands were just hurting, and then it was getting late, so I was like, let me just do this tomorrow. But on the plus side, I do think that this blanket here won't take that long to do. They're just simple granny squares, and because the granny squares are so large and then putting it together, I think the blanket will come out pretty big. I know I said I was gonna do 20 rows, but I think I wanna push it to like 24 rows, so then the squares are just extra big. Like, I love huge blankets, and I want this blanket to be gigantic. Either this blanket or the swirl blanket. Like maybe this one could be a simple throw, and then the swirl blanket could be huge, or vice versa. I listened to the audiobook for Babel by R.F. Kuang, and oh my gosh, you guys, I think I bought this last year around this time, and one of my goals this year is to read every book I own before purchasing any other books. Babel is so beautiful. I won't give any spoilers, but it's just so heartbreaking and real, and I didn't want to finish it because I was so intrigued by its magic system, the beautiful yet heart-wrenching and hopelessness-induced commentary on colonialism, and how I feel like I was studying translation myself. I'm absolutely going to borrow R.F. Kuang's other books from the library and digest them as soon as I'm able to, because Babel instantly became one of my favorite books I've read this year. So far this year, I've also finished Kaikeyi, which is a retelling of the epic called Ramayana, Mexican Gothic, which is basically Get Out but with mushrooms, and The Namesake, which the film of the same name was adapted from. I recommend each and every one of these books. I'm probably not going to record for the rest of the day just because this is a pretty repetitive process, but I did finish the first square. I did a total of 22 rows and I just measured it, and it comes out to be 24 inches in width and 25 inches in length. And if I do 3 of those, then it'll come out to be 75 by 72, or is it 72 by 75, which I think is a good size for a blanket. I already started with the second square, and I made sure to do this one that has green also, just to get out the way to see if I am going to run out of the yarn. This is what I'm working with right now. You can see that this is already smaller than the other one, and I'm really hoping that it pushes through and is just enough to finish this because I don't need green anywhere else. But I love the two colors together. Of course, pink goes good with green, so I had to do a little square with those. And I am hoping that I can do 5 squares tonight. It seems a bit of a stretch. I started working on these at 10 a.m. and right now it's 2:20, which is not that bad. So I really just want to lock in and see how many I can finish. But I'm gonna go eat really quick and then see you guys tomorrow with how many I get done. I ended up working on the squares for a total of 3 days and was surprised that I ended up finishing 2.5 squares per day. But on day 4, I was finally done with making all the squares and was excited to put them together. What if I made a blanket that was literally this thick? Like you had to make 9 squares for 1 square and then stitch them all together so it can be a weighted blanket. I feel like that would be perfect for scrap yarn, but that would take ages and ages and ages to do. All of the squares are done. I am gonna throw them all in the washer and dryer so that it can block in a way, and then after that I'm gonna put them all together. All of the squares are finally done from the washing machine and the dryer, and they're all very soft and cozy, and I'm really excited to put it together. I already put all the squares wrong side up, and so all I have to do is sew the sides together vertically and then horizontally. I didn't make a tutorial like I usually would in these types of videos, mainly because I've done the basic granny square tutorial a bunch of times, and also because with a lot of the scrap yarn projects I decide to do, they are a bit spontaneous. This is an easy spontaneous since it's just putting a bunch of granny squares together, but you'll see exactly what I mean when I show you how the swirl blanket turned out. But yeah, all I did was sew the squares together by taking a really long piece of yarn and sewing into both squares with a tapestry needle until the end. Once all the squares were connected vertically, I did the same exact thing to them horizontally. Then afterwards, I created a basic single crochet border around the entire blanket, and then it was complete. I finished the blanket last night, but it was getting a bit too dark, so I wanted to show it in nice natural lighting. But here it is, all complete. I'm gonna put a little video because it's way too big to show it in this one, but this came out just as big as I wanted it to be. It's very long, it's very warm and soft, and I really like it. I'm so happy I made this. This was worth all of the pain. I'm really happy I can add it to my crochet blanket collection. I have a total of, including this one, I have this, I have the Twilight blanket, the Stranger Things blanket, the Celestial blanket I made, but now I'll have this one and the Swirl blanket, which will make 4 or 5. So yeah, this was very cute. I love how this came out. I've been using my Stranger Things blanket on my bed since it's been really cold due to it being winter. And I feel like I might exchange it or add this one on top just for extra warmth. It's just so cozy and I'm really happy how it came out. I already started the swirl blanket, so I'm just gonna go back to the past really quick and show you how I made it, and then I'll meet you again in the future. I started making the swirl blanket with the tutorial that I'll link in the description box below, and it was going perfectly fine. I've used this exact tutorial for my Coraline swirls, so I knew it would turn out cute. So far for the swirl blanket, I have a total of 10 rows, and I really like how it's looking. There's something slightly off that I don't like in the color scheme. Maybe I should have used a lighter brown or maybe a different shade of green, but I like it at the same time. I don't know, something's just like in my head saying, I like it, but it could be better in terms of the colors. But it's not that big of a deal because this is a scrap yarn project and I'm using what I have. So yeah, I'm gonna see how much I can finish today. Right now it's 1 p.m. It's not that long to do initially, but I know as it gets bigger, it's gonna take me probably like 30 minutes to do one row and stuff like that. But I like projects like this where it's just slightly repetitive and I can just watch something, listen to an audiobook, and just relax, and it's kind of meditative in a way. But yeah, I'll update you when it gets bigger. So right now I'm on row 12 and my hand is starting to hurt really badly. So I'm gonna take a long break today. It's 2 o'clock now. I'll probably stop until like 6 maybe and see how much I can do from there. And then if it's still hurting, I'll just wait until tomorrow to finish the blanket or continue working on the blanket. So it's the next day after I had to stop due to my hands hurting, and I have a total of 20 rows so far for the blanket. I posted on Instagram about my hands hurting and people were saying to use compression gloves, and that reminded me that I actually did have compression gloves. They were just in the closet, and I bought them when I first started to crochet, but I didn't use them because on my hand right here I had like a ganglion cyst. I think that's how you pronounce it. And whenever I put the gloves on, it would just put too much pressure on it, so then it would just really hurt and I couldn't use the gloves. But here I am today going to test them out. Hopefully they work. I'm gonna keep you updated on that, but I'm gonna go ahead and see how much I can finish. And if I do feel any pain, I'm just gonna go ahead and take a break because I really don't want to injure myself. There's just no point in doing that, you know? So I'll keep you updated and let you know how much I get done. All right, so I've been crocheting for about 3-ish hours now consistently with the gloves on, and for the most part it's pretty fine. Like I haven't had any issues. The only thing is like right here on my left hand, that's the only part that was hurting like about an hour ago. So I took a little break and just for like 5 minutes, like to text my friend back, and then got back into it and it was fine. But I'm really surprised that these gloves are actually working. I completely forgot that I had them, and whenever my hands were in pain, I'd just be like sitting like this or doing something else, but very minimally with my hands. So I'm really happy that you guys have told me about the gloves and it made me remember that I had some, and now I feel like I can do more. So when I was starting with the gloves, it was a bit hard to go as fast as I usually do, but I think that's the point. It's supposed to keep your hands compressed. I don't know how they're supposed to work, but also kind of slow, like put you at a perfect speed to where it's not actually straining your hands and everything. But I still am gonna make sure that I'm doing stretches before and after my crochet sessions, and then also making sure to take frequent breaks as well. Here is what I have of the blanket so far. Right now it's 45 rows and it's pretty big, but it's not as big as I wanted it to be. But I have to stop now because this is how much of the green I have left. And I want to square out the blanket. And right now the blanket is 46 inches in width, and then I measured the length and it came up to 45. So I'm gonna go ahead and square off the blanket, but if I don't have enough to square it off, just in case, I might take off the last row. So it's 44 rows instead of 45, but I'll let you know. So even with the tutorial I was using, I had to still figure out the math for the blanket I was doing since it was a completely different size to the one that was in the tutorial. And for the most part, it was easy to figure out. I just divided the amount of stitches I had by 4 and then counted each of the stitches and placed a stitch marker onto each of the 4 places. But then the hard part after that was figuring out how to square it off exactly. What I decided to do was do the corners in treble crochet, then work down from that with 1 treble crochet, 2 extended double crochets, 2 doubles, 2 half doubles, and then around 74-ish single crochets, and then worked up the pattern of half doubles, doubles, etc. until I had 4 corners. And this method was correct, but I did it in the wrong way, which I'll explain in a bit. Here is what the blanket came out to look like. I just finished washing it, and it's very soft and cozy now. So I was very close into making this more square, but the only thing is that when it's round and if you have a large circle, you have to kind of gradually make the square or the side of the square. And what I mean by that is you have to build it up and then kind of bring it down as if it's a slope, and then center it and then bring it up again. I thought I did enough stitches for that, but apparently not. So for the first row, I did treble crochet and then a chain 2 and 2 more treble crochets in the same stitch, and then I did a treble crochet in the next 2, extended doubles, and then doubles for the next 2, half doubles for the next 2, and then I worked around 70 single crochets until I was getting close to where my other stitch marker was that indicated that this should be a corner, and I gradually built it up again. What I should have done is probably done more treble crochets. Like instead of the 1 here, I should have probably done maybe 4 or 5 treble crochets, and then maybe like 3 extended, 3 double, 3 half double, just so that this slope would gradually get smaller and smaller until it gets to the single crochet. And I feel like doing that, and then after that I do 2 rows of double crochets with the little corner sides as well, I feel like this would have been more squared, because it looked like it was getting pretty close to that, but this was my first time actually squaring out a circle without a tutorial, and I would have gone back to fix it, but I was okay with how this turned out. It doesn't really change the blanket in a way, like obviously it's not as square as I'd like it to be, but I can still throw it on just fine like this, you know. It's still warm and cozy, and honestly, if I had more yarn, I could have made this like incredibly big and not even have to square it. It could just be a huge circle that you just throw on and it would still cover your entire body, like those star blankets that people are doing, where it's just so big. At first I was not really interested in that type of blanket because I'm like, there's so many corners and it won't cover my feet or anything, but as long as you make it incredibly big, then it'll be fine. But yeah, in the end, I'm actually happy with how both of them came out. Obviously this one could have been better, but I honestly learned a lot from this, and I feel like if I wanted to make another one, I would definitely do what I thought earlier and just gradually make the slope get smaller and then build it back up more so than I did this time. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Before we go, I want to quickly say thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform that allows you to create your very own website. If you want to design your own website, yet you don't know where to get started exactly, Squarespace offers a wonderful amount of templates to get you started. There's numerous amounts of categories to choose from, whether you're wanting to create a portfolio or a blog, plus you can customize them even further with their easy-to-use designing interface. If you're someone who's wanting to sell products, whether they're physical, digital, or even memberships, Squarespace has all the tools you need to get started, like their commerce tool, which allows you to track orders you've received and even offer ways to develop your shop even further. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch your site, go to squarespace.com/ikoxun for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video.